A 19.5 mile hike with a 20-pound pack as I'm closing in on completing my 75th trip around the planet. Can I make it? Good morning, everyone. Dr. Bill here. Thank you for returning to my channel and joining me on this hike. Today, I am on a 19.5 mile, about 19.5 miles, somewhere between 19 and 19.5 mile hike with a 20-pound pack in these mountains near my home. I wish I could say that I had some kind of a very cool reason for doing a 19.5 mile hike, but the truth is, I'm just doing it to see if I can do it. I'm about 5 weeks short of my 75th birthday, completing that trip around the sun. And if I can't do it, if it's too much, I've got a bailout point at 12 miles, and I've got a bailout point at 13 miles. But the other thing I'm going to do too is I'm going to use this video as an update on my budget hiking shoe video that I did about 3 months ago. So, let me continue on with the hike and we'll see where we go from here. So, I'm about 14 miles up trail and my body's holding up pretty well. So I decided not to take the 12 and 13 mile bail points. I want to go for the full 19 miles because I'm feeling relatively good. I do want to take a moment though. I found one of the few places that are nice to sit down on this trail. I do want to take a moment to talk about these Denali Birch hiking shoes that I featured about 5 videos ago. They're holding up pretty well. These are the shoes that I hiked in the Grand Canyon almost a year ago. I'll get at least 1.5 years use out of them, and they're doing really well for me in most cases. Now, I did identify in my previous video the 3 shortcomings of this shoe. One of them is that they don't put a good floorboard on the bottom, so you'll have to replace it at about 100 miles. The second is that it's not waterproof, and the third is it does not have a shank. But I do want to talk about a 4th shortcoming that probably will not affect 90% of the people who use this shoe, who buy this shoe. And again, for a $25 shoe, getting 1.5 years good use out of it, that's saying a lot. But the problem is that my experience with this shoe, and again I've reinforced it today, is that its daily life limit on a hike is probably between 13 and 14 miles. And let me explain what I mean by that. When you hike and put your foot in the shoe, you immediately start radiating out body heat through your foot into the inside cavity of the shoe. That also gets maximized by the friction inside of the shoe while you're walking. In addition to that, at least in the summertime, as you're walking on these hotter trails, you get the radiant heat coming up from the soil affecting the outside of the sole of your shoe. And combined, what happens is that, at least with this shoe, between 13 and 14 miles, the sole starts to soften up considerably. And I have a foolproof way of knowing that I've exceeded the limit of the shoe, and that is that I start acutely feeling the rocks through the bottom of my shoe on the bottom of my foot. And I'm there at 14 miles now, and I still have about 5.5 miles to go. Now, there's a simple way that you can offset that, and that is at some point around the 8, 9, 10 mile mark, take your shoes off and let them air out for about an hour. They'll cool down. The problem that I have is I don't have an hour to spare to cool down my shoes. So I'm going to keep pushing on, but that is the 4th shortcoming of this boot. But again, as I said, for a boot that you can get on, or a hiking shoe that you can get on sale for $25, this boot I think is a real steal. And this is a quick view of these mountains that I am hiking through today. It is an absolutely beautiful day to be on the trail. So I'm about 17 miles into the hike. Overall, my body is feeling pretty good, but the bottom of my shoes are continuing to deteriorate, and the bottom of my feet are getting kind of sore from these rocks. But also, I can feel that I have got a couple of good blisters developing on my feet. One is in the outside rear of my left heel, and the other is on the outside rear of my right heel. And unfortunately, part of my short-sightedness and planning for today, I did not bring any moleskin with me. So I'm just going to have to suck this up the last 2.5 miles. But again, overall, at 17 miles, I'm feeling really pretty good. Ferns always amaze me. They're a semi-tropical fern. A botanist told me once that they're more tropical than semi-tropical. But we're up here on the mountain. We're at about 6,000 feet. Look how fern-like they are. And this area gets such a ferocious winter. It's hard to believe that a plant like this can come back every year. It gets buried under feet and feet of snow, freezing sub-zero winds, and yet look how lush they come back. So, I'm back at the Jeep. My trusty old 28-year-old Jeep Cherokee runs like a top. And it turns out that the hike came in at a little over, just a shade over 19.5 miles. And I have to admit, sans my feet, overall my body feels pretty good. From a stamina standpoint, with 1 being fully charged and 10 being completely depleted, I'd rate myself about an 8. I still have a little bit of energy left in the tank. But again, overall, my body feels pretty good. I do have to say, though, that my feet have taken a tremendous beating on this hike. As I said earlier in the video, the usable distance, I think, on these budget hiking shoes is probably, at least in the summertime, is probably about 13 to 14 miles. From 14 down to 19 and a half. Boy, I felt every rock to the bottom of the shoe. I also have 2 really decent blisters on the heels of both of my feet. I can actually feel the fluid moving around inside the blister. But you know, bottom line, 19.5 mile hike, mountain hike, 20-pound pack. Overall, I think that's pretty good for a guy who's on the cusp of his 75th birthday. What do you guys think? So I will post a map of the trail that I took at the end of the video, and I will also take a picture of the tread on the bottom of these shoes after almost a season and a half of hiking. Again, these are the same hiking shoes I used at the Grand Canyon. So it's been about 2.5 weeks since I finished the 19-mile hike. I have to admit that my feet were really torn up pretty badly with those blisters. I actually took pictures of them. I was going to include it in the video, and my wife just said they were so disgusting I would lose subscribers if I included it, so I'm going to leave it out. But it tore up my heels pretty badly. Those last 2 miles were really, really rough. So I was out of commission for a week waiting for those blisters to heal, and then I took my wife to Yellowstone for a week The last video I published was from Yellowstone, and so that's why there's been this delay. In terms of my physical reaction to the hike, I do have to admit I felt decent after the hike was over, and I felt decent for the next 4 days. But in truth, it took me at least 4 days to recover from that hike. I was going to go out and try a 10-mile hike on that 4th day, and I decided my legs needed some more time, so I made the choice not to do it. But yeah, for 4 days, I was depleted. I knew I was depleted. I drank electrolytes every day, and I recovered, but yeah, that hike took a lot of starch out of me. So now, let me just shift over to the hiking boots themselves and do an update on those. So now these hiking shoes, I've got about 1.5 years wear on them, probably more than 400 miles on them. And you can see the tread in these shoes is really still quite intact. I have a little bit of a problem there on the right shoe, on the heel of the right shoe. But you can see how they're in very, very good shape as far as the tread is concerned. Now, I am getting to a point where I'm going to have to retire these shoes because finally, after 1.5 seasons on my left shoe, the pronation is becoming a problem. But I mean, my goodness, $25 for a pair of shoes that last 1.5 seasons, give me more than 400 miles. And these are, again, the shoes that I hiked down to the Grand Canyon. So to finish my thought, I think $25 for a pair of hiking shoes that last 1.5 seasons and maintain this kind of tread, I think is a pretty good deal. And so I wanted to show you this pair. And this is a pair I got pretty close to 2 full seasons in. And you can see that the heels are pretty worn out. But this is how the front of the tread looked after 2 full seasons. Now here's a funny story about these shoes. I actually used them for a couple of years to be my the shoes while I was mowing my grass. But then this season I converted them into wading shoes. And it was surprising how good they were on these western streams as wading shoes. So I'm going to keep them and use them as wading shoes. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I at least could prove that at 75 or close to 75, I was still able to knock off a 19.5-mile mountain hike. And I'm pretty satisfied with that. So I will see you on the trail.